Women don't have what it takes for precision shooting. That's what Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Kane told Riley Collins when she applied for Marine Scout Sniper School at Camp Pendleton. 24 years old, 5'6", with auburn hair and hazel eyes that everyone underestimated, she'd been hearing variations of that dismissal her entire military career. The Marine Corps had only recently opened sniper training to women, and the old guard wasn't thrilled about it. What they didn't know, what nobody at Camp Pendleton knew, was that Riley had been shooting since she was 8, raised by a father who'd been a police marksman, trained in disciplines that went far beyond basic marksmanship. When she shattered Master Sergeant David Chen's 15-year accuracy record during her first week of training, the laughter stopped. But when insurgents attacked their forward operating base and Riley found herself in a week-long siege with her spotter trapped behind enemy lines, she discovered that breaking records was just the beginning. Because real sniping isn't about hitting targets on a range. It's about making impossible shots when lives hang in the balance, when the enemy thinks they have you surrounded, and when failure means everyone you've sworn to protect dies in the crossfire. Staff Sergeant Riley Collins had been a Marine for 6 years, but she'd never felt more like an outsider than she did walking into the briefing room at Marine Scout Sniper School. 24 years old, with auburn hair pulled back in regulation style and hazel eyes that missed nothing, she was one of only 3 women in a class of 32 Marines, and the only one who'd volunteered for sniper training instead of being voluntarily recommended by her command. The Marine Corps had opened Scout Sniper School to women only 18 months ago, and the integration hadn't been smooth. The instructors ranged from cautiously supportive to openly skeptical, and most of the male Marines in her class seemed to view the women as either curiosities or obstacles to their own success. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Kane, the chief instructor, as he entered the briefing room, "welcome to Marine Scout Sniper School. Over the next 8 weeks, we will determine which of you have what it takes to be designated as Marine Scout snipers. Statistically, 70% of you will not complete this course." Kane's eyes settled on Riley and the 2 other women. "Some of you are here because the Marine Corps is experimenting with new demographics in precision shooting roles. Let me be clear. I don't care what your gender is, what your background is, or what anyone thinks you deserve. I care about whether you can make the shot that keeps Marines alive when everything else has failed." Riley had been expecting this. She'd heard about Kane's reputation, a 20-year Marine veteran with 3 combat deployments and a teaching style that broke down Marines to their basic components before building them back up as snipers. He wasn't known for coddling anyone, but he was particularly skeptical about women in sniper roles. "Collins," Kane called out, reading from his roster. "Why do you want to be a sniper?" Riley stood up. "To be the best marksman in the Marine Corps, Gunnery Sergeant." A few Marines snickered. Kane's expression didn't change. "The best marksman in the Marine Corps is Master Sergeant David Chen, who holds the school record for long-range accuracy. He achieved 98.7% accuracy at ranges up to 1,200 meters, a record that stood for 15 years. You think you can beat that?" "I think I can try, Gunnery Sergeant." More laughter from the class. Kane held up his hand for silence. "We'll see about that, Collins. We'll see about that." What Gunnery Sergeant Kane didn't know, what nobody at Marine Scout Sniper School knew, was that Riley Collins had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Her father, Detective Lieutenant Michael Collins, had been a police marksman and competitive shooter who'd started teaching Riley precision shooting when she was 8 years old. By the time she was 16, she was out shooting adult competitors at regional marksmanship competitions. By 18, she'd won the National Junior Precision Rifle Championship 3 consecutive years. Riley had joined the Marines immediately after high school, but she'd kept her competitive shooting background quiet. She'd learned early that being exceptional at something as a woman often brought more problems than praise, and she'd gotten tired of having to prove herself over and over again. Instead, she'd been a model Marine, competent, reliable, unremarkable. But now, in Scout Sniper School, she was ready to stop hiding what she could do. The first week of training focused on basic marksmanship fundamentals: breathing, trigger control, body position, natural point of aim. For most of the Marines in the class, this was advanced training that required intense concentration and practice. For Riley, it was review of skills she'd been developing for 16 years. On the third day, they moved to the 600-meter range for long-distance accuracy testing. Each Marine would fire 10 rounds at a standard target, with scoring based on precision and consistency. Riley was assigned firing position number 12 between Lance Corporal Danny Rodriguez, a former infantry Marine from Texas who'd been talking about his hunting experience since day one, and Corporal Jake Morrison, who'd made several comments about whether women had the upper body strength for long-distance shooting. "Collins," Morrison said as they set up their rifles, "you nervous? This is where we separate the real shooters from the wannabes." Riley adjusted her M40A6 sniper rifle with the methodical precision her father had taught her. "Just focused on the fundamentals, Morrison." "Yeah, well, fundamentals only take you so far. At some point you need natural talent and physical capability." Riley didn't respond. She was already reading the wind conditions, calculating the adjustments needed for the 600-meter shot, settling into the shooting position she'd use to win national championships. The first Marine began firing. Riley listened to the rhythm of his shots, the spacing between rounds, the sound of the rifle cycling. Good shooter, but rushing slightly. Probably pulling some shots. One by one, the Marines took their turns. Most achieved respectable scores. 75% to 85% accuracy at 600 meters was considered good for this stage of training. Rodriguez shot 87%. Morrison managed 84%. Then it was Riley's turn. She settled behind her rifle, adjusted the scope for wind and distance, and entered what her father had called the zone, a state of perfect focus where nothing existed except the shooter, the rifle, and the target. Her breathing slowed. Her heart rate decreased. The noise of the range faded away. Riley fired her first shot. Perfect center hit. She worked the bolt, chambered the next round, settled back into position. Second shot, perfect center hit. Third shot, perfect center hit. By her sixth shot, the other Marines had stopped talking and were watching her shoot. By her eighth shot, even the instructors had gathered behind her position. Riley fired her 10th and final shot, then set her rifle down and waited for the target assessment. Range safety called out the scores over the loudspeaker. "Collins, firing point 12. 10 shots fired, 10 hits scored, all within the X-ring. Perfect score, 100% accuracy at 600 meters. The range went quiet. Gunnery Sergeant Kane walked over to Riley's position, looked through his spotting scope at her target, then looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Collins, have you shot competitively before?" "Yes, Gunnery Sergeant, civilian competitions." "What kind of competitions?" "National level precision rifle, Gunnery Sergeant." Kane nodded slowly. "I see. And you didn't think that was worth mentioning when you introduced yourself?" "I didn't think it was relevant to Marine sniper training, Gunnery Sergeant." Kane almost smiled. "Collins, tomorrow we're moving to the 800-meter range. Let's see how relevant your civilian shooting experience is when we increase the difficulty." The next day, at 800 meters, Riley shot 100% again. The day after that, at 1,000 meters, she maintained perfect accuracy. On Friday of the first week, Kane announced they would be shooting at 1,200 meters, the distance at which Master Sergeant Chen had set his 15-year accuracy record. "This is the benchmark, Marines," Kane announced to the class. Master Sergeant Chen achieved 98.7% accuracy at this distance, which means he scored 14.8 hits out of 15 shots fired. It's a record that has stood for 15 years and represents the highest level of precision shooting in Marine Corps history. Riley took her position on the firing line, knowing that every Marine and instructor on the range was watching her. She'd been shooting perfect scores all week, and the pressure was mounting for her to either maintain that standard or finally show some human fallibility. She loaded 15 rounds into her magazine, adjusted her scope for the significantly longer distance, and began her calculations. At 1,200 meters, environmental factors became exponentially more important. Wind speed and direction, air temperature, humidity, even the rotation of the Earth could affect bullet trajectory. Riley had been making these calculations in competitive shooting for years, but never with so many people watching, never with so much expectation riding on each shot. She settled into position, controlled her breathing, and fired her first shot. Perfect center hit. Shot after shot, Riley maintained the same methodical precision. The other Marines had stopped their own training to watch her shoot. Even Marines from other classes had gathered to observe what was happening on the 1,200-meter range. After her 15th and final shot, Riley set her rifle down and waited. The range safety officer examined her target through high-powered optics, then double-checked his assessment with two other instructors. Finally, Gunnery Sergeant Kane picked up the loudspeaker microphone. "Collins, firing point 7, 15 shots fired, 15 hits scored, all within the X-ring. Perfect accuracy at 1,200 meters, new school record." The range erupted in cheers from the Marines who'd been watching, but Riley barely heard them. She was thinking about her father, about the years of early morning practice sessions, about the competitions where she'd been the youngest shooter and often the only woman, about the dream of proving that gender had nothing to do with precision shooting. Kane walked over to her position. This time, he was definitely smiling. "Collins, in 15 years of teaching sniper school, I've never seen shooting like that. You just broke a record that many of us thought was unbreakable." "Thank you, Gunnery Sergeant." "Don't thank me yet." Perfect shooting on a range is impressive, but it's not the same as operational sniping. Now we move to the hard part: field work, camouflage, stalking, target identification, and decision-making under pressure. Kane paused, then added, "But I'll tell you this, Collins, you've got my attention. And you've got my respect." The second phase of Scout Sniper School focused on fieldcraft, the ability to move unseen through hostile territory, establish concealed positions, and gather intelligence while avoiding detection. This was where many Marines who excelled at marksmanship struggled, because precision shooting was only half of being a sniper. Riley found herself partnered with Lance Corporal Marcus Thompson, a quiet Marine from North Carolina who'd been one of the few students who hadn't seemed surprised by her shooting performance. "Collins," Thompson said as they prepared for their first stalking exercise, "I've got to ask, where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My father taught me competitive precision rifle shooting starting when I was 8. I competed nationally through high school, then joined the Marines." "Why didn't you mention that earlier?" Riley considered the question. "Because I wanted to be judged as a Marine, not as a female competitive shooter. I wanted to earn respect here, not have it given to me because of what I did as a civilian." Thompson nodded. "Makes sense. But now everyone knows you can outshoot anyone here. That's going to change how they see you." "Maybe. But shooting is only part of being a sniper. I still have to prove I can do the rest of the job." The stalking exercises were designed to simulate real-world reconnaissance missions. Teams of 2 Marines would infiltrate a designated area, establish concealed observation positions, and gather intelligence on simulated enemy positions without being detected by instructors acting as counter-surveillance. Riley and Thompson spent 3 days planning their approach to their first major stalking exercise, a daylight infiltration across 2 miles of varied terrain to observe an enemy position and report on activities. They moved out at dawn, carrying full sniper equipment including ghillie suits, observation gear, and their rifles. The target was a compound where instructors were conducting simulated enemy activities that the students needed to identify and report. Riley had studied stalking techniques extensively, but this was her first practical application of those skills under realistic conditions. Moving slowly, using natural concealment, avoiding open areas, communicating through hand signals. It was a completely different skill set from precision shooting. 4 hours into the exercise, they were within 400 meters of the target when Thompson spotted movement to their left. One of the counter-surveillance instructors was moving along their planned route. Riley signaled for Thompson to freeze, then slowly worked her way into a better concealed position. Through her scope, she could see the instructor methodically searching the area where they would have been if they'd continued on their original approach. For the next 2 hours, they remained motionless, waiting for the instructor to move away from their position. Riley found herself thinking about patience, about the difference between competitive shooting, where everything happened quickly, and operational sniping, where success often depended on the ability to wait without moving for extended periods. When the counter-surveillance instructor finally moved on, Riley and Thompson continued their approach. They reached their observation position just as the sun reached its peak, providing maximum illumination of the target area. Through their spotting scopes, they began documenting the simulated enemy activities, vehicle movements, personnel counts, weapons placements, communication equipment. Riley found herself naturally falling into the spotter role, using her precision observation skills to identify details that Thompson might have missed. "Collins," Thompson whispered, "you see the antenna array on the building to the left of the main compound." Riley adjusted her scope. "Got it. Looks like a communication setup. 3 different antenna types suggesting multiple radio capabilities. That wasn't in the intelligence briefing." "That's good information. They spent 6 hours in their concealed position, gathering intelligence and avoiding detection. When they finally made their extraction, they had compiled a detailed report on enemy activities that exceeded the exercise requirements." Gunnery Sergeant Kane reviewed their report that evening. "Collins, Thompson, excellent work on the stalking exercise. You gathered more detailed intelligence than any other team, and you were never detected by counter-surveillance. Collins, your observation skills are exceptional. You identified several details that other teams missed." "Thank you, Gunnery Sergeant. But here's the question, Collins. What happens when observation turns into engagement? When you have to take the shot under operational conditions, with lives on the line, with no second chances?" Riley met his eyes steadily. "I guess we'll find out, Gunnery Sergeant." "Yes, we will. Because next week, we're moving to combat simulation exercises, and that's where we separate the snipers from the marksmen." The combat simulation phase of Scout Sniper School was designed to replicate the stress, confusion, and decision-making pressure of actual combat. Students would face scenarios where they had to make split-second decisions about targets, deal with equipment failures, and operate under simulated enemy fire. Riley's first combat simulation placed her in the role of Overwatch sniper for a Marine patrol conducting a raid on a hostile compound. Her mission was to provide precision fire support, eliminate specific high-value targets, and protect the assault team if they encountered resistance. She was positioned 800 meters from the target building, with Thompson acting as her spotter. The scenario called for the patrol to breach the building and capture or eliminate enemy leadership, while Riley provided overwatch and engaged any threats that emerged. The exercise began at 0400 hours, using night vision and thermal optics to identify targets in low-light conditions. Riley had trained with night vision extensively during competitive shooting, but never under these kinds of operational conditions. "Collins, I've got movement in the second-story window, east side of the building," Thompson reported through their radio. "Appears to be armed sentry." Riley adjusted her scope to the indicated position. Through thermal imaging, she could see a figure with what appeared to be a rifle, positioned to observe the Marine patrol's approach. "I see him," Riley confirmed. "Clear shot, 847 meters." "Patrol is 2 minutes from breach," Thompson updated. "That sentry needs to be neutralized before they reach the building." Riley settled into position, controlled her breathing, and calculated the shot. Night shooting added complexity. Different light conditions, thermal optics instead of traditional scopes, the need for absolute precision to avoid alerting other sentries. She fired once. The thermal signature of the target disappeared from her scope. "Target down," Thompson confirmed. "Patrol is moving to breach." For the next 20 minutes, Riley provided overwatch as the Marine patrol cleared the building room by room. Twice, she engaged simulated enemies who emerged from concealed positions to threaten the assault team. Both shots were at ranges exceeding 700 meters. Both were one-shot kills. When the exercise concluded, the opposing force instructor approached Riley's position. "Collins, I've been running combat simulations here for 8 years, and I've never seen more precise shooting under operational conditions. 3 targets engaged, 3 targets eliminated, all at long range, all in low light conditions. That's exceptional performance. Gunnery Sergeant Kane, who had been observing the exercise, nodded his agreement. Collins, you just demonstrated something that most Marines never achieve, the ability to perform precision shooting under combat stress. That's the difference between a marksman and a sniper. Riley felt a surge of satisfaction, but also a growing awareness of the weight of responsibility that came with these skills. On the range, perfect shooting was about precision and competition. In combat simulations, perfect shooting was about keeping Marines alive. Gunnery Sergeant, what's next? Kane smiled. Next, we find out if you can do all of this when people are actually shooting back. The final phase of Scout Sniper School involved a week-long field exercise that simulated extended combat operations. Students would be deployed to a training area that replicated hostile territory, where they would conduct reconnaissance, engage targets of opportunity, and survive in the field while avoiding capture by opposing forces. Riley and Thompson were assigned a mission that would test everything they'd learned. Infiltrate enemy territory, establish an observation post, conduct surveillance on enemy activities, and eliminate specific high-value targets when opportunities presented themselves. The exercise area covered 50 square miles of challenging terrain, mountains, forests, open areas, and simulated urban environments. For 7 days, they would be operating independently, with minimal support, against an opposing force that included Marine instructors trained in counter-sniper tactics. They inserted at dawn on Monday, carrying everything they would need for a week in the field: food, water, ammunition, communications equipment, and their sniper rifles. The first 2 days went according to plan. They established a concealed observation post overlooking a key valley where enemy forces were conducting operations. Riley documented enemy movements, identified high-value targets, and prepared for engagement opportunities. On Wednesday morning, everything changed. Riley was conducting routine surveillance when she spotted movement that didn't match the expected enemy patterns. A Marine in friendly uniform, moving erratically through terrain that should have been controlled by opposing forces. Through her scope, she could see that the Marine appeared to be injured and was being pursued by multiple opposing force personnel. "Thompson, I've got a situation," Riley whispered into her radio. "Friendly forces, one Marine, appears injured, being pursued by OPFOR about 1,200 meters southeast of our position." Thompson adjusted his spotting scope. "I see him. Looks like he's separated from his unit, trying to evade capture." Riley recognized the Marine. It was Rodriguez, one of their classmates, who had been assigned to a different mission area. He appeared to have a leg injury and was limping badly, with 3 opposing force Marines closing in on his position. This wasn't part of their assigned mission. Their orders were to maintain concealment and focus on their surveillance targets. But Riley was watching a fellow Marine about to be captured, and she had the capability to intervene. "Thompson, what's our call here?" "Officially? We maintain mission focus and don't compromise our position." "And unofficially?" Thompson was quiet for a moment. "Unofficially, that's Rodriguez, and he needs help." Riley made a decision that would define her understanding of what it meant to be a sniper. She adjusted her scope to engage the lead opposing force Marine at 1,200 meters, the same distance at which she'd broken the school accuracy record. But this time, instead of shooting at a paper target under controlled conditions, she was shooting to protect a fellow Marine while maintaining her concealed position. The shot was exponentially more difficult. Rodriguez and his pursuers were moving. The range was long, wind conditions were variable, and she had to achieve perfect accuracy without revealing her position to other enemy forces in the area. Riley controlled her breathing, calculated wind drift and bullet drop, and settled into the shooting position that had become second nature. She fired once. The lead opposing force Marine went down, hit by a training round that registered a kill on his monitoring equipment. The other 2 pursuers took cover, confused about where the shot had come from. Riley immediately adjusted her aim and engaged the second Marine. Another perfect shot at long range. The third opposing force Marine broke off his pursuit of Rodriguez and began searching for the sniper position, but Riley and Thompson were too well concealed to be spotted. Rodriguez, recognizing that someone was providing overwatch, used the opportunity to escape and evade further toward friendly territory. "Collins," Thompson whispered, "that was some incredible shooting, but we just compromised our mission." "Maybe, but Rodriguez is alive and free, and we maintained our position." For the rest of the week, Riley and Thompson continued their surveillance mission while dealing with the increased enemy attention their intervention had generated. Opposing force units were now actively searching for sniper positions, using counter-sniper tactics to locate and eliminate them. Riley found herself in a cat-and-mouse game, with Marines trained specifically to hunt snipers. She had to change positions frequently, use advanced camouflage techniques, and remain constantly alert for signs that they'd been detected. On Friday, their final day in the field, the opposing force located their position. Riley was conducting morning surveillance when Thompson spotted movement to their north, a full squad of Marines moving in tactical formation directly toward their concealed position. "Collins, we've got company. Squad-sized element, 400 meters in closing. They know where we are." Riley assessed their options quickly. They could try to relocate, but they'd likely be spotted during movement. They could call for extraction, but that would end their exercise early and probably result in failure. Or they could use their position advantage to engage the approaching force. "Thompson, how many?" "Count 9 Marines in assault formation. They're definitely hunting us." Riley made another decision that went beyond her training. Instead of evading or calling for help, she decided to engage a superior force from her concealed position. "Thompson, start spotting targets. We're going to hold this position." "Collins, that's 9 Marines against 2 of us." "That's 9 Marines against 2 snipers. There's a difference." Riley settled into shooting position as the opposing force Marines continued their approach. At 400 meters, she had clear shots at multiple targets, but engaging would reveal her position and likely result in suppressive fire from the remaining Marines. She waited until the lead Marines were at 300 meters, then began engaging targets with the rapid precision shooting she'd been developing throughout the course. First shot, lead Marine down. Second shot, automatic weapons gunner eliminated. Third shot, squad leader neutralized. The remaining 6 Marines took cover and began returning fire, but Riley's concealed position gave her significant advantage. She could see them clearly while remaining hidden in her prepared fighting position. Thompson was providing target information and helping coordinate their defensive engagement, while Riley continued precision shooting under combat conditions. Fourth shot, Marine attempting to flank from the east. Fifth shot, Grenadier preparing to engage their position. "Collins, they're calling for reinforcements," Thompson reported. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before this becomes a much bigger fight." Riley engaged her 6th target, then made a tactical decision. "Thompson, we're going to break contact. Grab your gear." Using smoke grenades and their knowledge of the terrain, Riley and Thompson successfully evaded the remaining opposing force Marines and extracted to friendly territory. When the exercise concluded on Saturday morning, Gunnery Sergeant Kane gathered all the students for final evaluations. "Marines, you've completed the most challenging training the Marine Corps offers for precision shooters. You've demonstrated marksmanship, fieldcraft, tactical decision-making, and the ability to operate independently under combat conditions." Kane looked directly at Riley. "Collins, your performance during this final exercise was exceptional. You engaged and eliminated 6 opposing force Marines while defending a concealed position against superior numbers. You also provided support to a fellow Marine under enemy pursuit, demonstrating the kind of tactical judgment we expect from scout snipers." He paused, then continued. "But more importantly, you made decisions under pressure that prioritized mission accomplishment and the safety of fellow Marines. That's what separates snipers from shooters." Riley felt a deep sense of accomplishment, but also an understanding that this was just the beginning. She'd proven she could shoot accurately, operate tactically, and make decisions under pressure. But real operational sniping would involve all of those skills, plus the weight of knowing that her shots would have permanent consequences. "Collins," Kane announced, "you've not only completed Scout Sniper School, you've set a new standard for precision shooting performance. Your marksmanship record will be difficult for future Marines to match." Riley stood at attention. "Thank you, Gunnery Sergeant." "Don't thank me yet, Marine. Now comes the hard part, using these skills in actual combat, where perfect shooting isn't about records, it's about keeping Marines alive." 6 months later, Scout Sniper Riley Collins found herself deployed to a forward operating base in a contested region where Marine units were conducting counterinsurgency operations. Her reputation from sniper school had preceded her, and she was assigned to a reconnaissance team conducting long-range surveillance and precision engagement missions. Her first operational deployment would test everything she'd learned in training, but under conditions where mistakes weren't scored as training failures. They resulted in casualties and mission failures. Riley was about to learn the difference between breaking records on a range and making shots that mattered when lives depended on perfect accuracy under the worst possible conditions. The woman who'd been laughed at for applying to sniper school was now the Marine that squad leaders requested specifically when they needed precision fire support. Because in the end, perfect shooting wasn't about proving doubters wrong or breaking records. It was about being the Marine who could make the impossible shot when everything else had failed, when the enemy thought they had the advantage, and when failure meant other Marines didn't come home. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.